Carrie sat up quickly in bed, breathing heavily. The dream rose petals were falling like blood rain and she was trapped in the middle of the sea of flowers, unable to breathe. When she woke up, the bedroom was quiet, the curtains were closed and only a little bit of light came in. However, a light rose fragrance lingered on the tip of her nose. Carrie never wore rose-scented perfume and this smell made her feel strange. She rubbed her temples to try to feel better. Jim was already fully dressed and waiting for her at the door. "Be careful on the road, honey," he said, walking over to her and kissing her on the forehead. His movements were gentle, his eyes focused. Carrie forced a smile and took the bag he handed her. "What do you want to eat tonight?" "I'll be back early." Jim ran his hands through her hair and spoke softly and tenderly. "Whatever," Carrie replied absent-mindedly. Jim didn't mind, gave her a hug and turned to leave. The moment the door closed, Carrie's smile vanished. Carrie sat in her usual cafe by the window where the sunlight shone on her, but she felt gloomy. The phone on the table vibrated. It was Private Investigator Jason. "Miss, here is the information you requested," Jason said, pushing a brown paper bag in front of her. Carrie took a deep breath, opened the envelope and took out the photos and documents inside. In the photos, Jim was walking side by side with a woman, talking and laughing. They were behaving intimately. The woman had a low ponytail, a white shawl and a long black velvet dress. She had an exquisite profile and gentle demeanor. Carrie noticed that the woman's name was Daphne and she was 3 years older than Jim. Carrie's fingers tightened involuntarily as she asked, "Is this a relationship between a younger man and an older woman?" "Miss, this woman also has a husband. I checked and it seems that there might be a mistake." Jason looked at Carrie's expression and felt a little embarrassed. Carrie was about to speak when her phone rang. It was Jim. She picked up the phone and heard Jim's gentle voice. "Honey, the chicken soup is ready. Drink it while it's hot. Don't tire yourself out at home. I'll be back soon." Carrie felt nothing but sarcasm as she listened to his sweet words. "I know," she replied indifferently, her tone devoid of any emotion. After hanging up, Carrie stared at the photo on the table, her eyes growing colder and colder. "Something's wrong. In the 3 years they've been married, when has Jim ever cooked and made chicken soup? He's the kind of guy who doesn't even bother to cook instant noodles. And his recent concern is a bit too attentive. It's as if he's afraid she'll discover something. A woman's sixth sense is sometimes more accurate than radar. Carrie suddenly remembered that Jim also seemed to have a light fragrance on him when he came home yesterday, but she didn't think much of it at the time. Now that she thinks about it, that smell was almost exactly the same as the rose scent in the bedroom. Carrie looked through the calendar on her phone. She had marked the anniversary with a red heart a week ago. That day Jim had left work early, which was rare, and booked a table at her favorite restaurant. Carrie had dressed up and even sprayed on some perfume. But that night Jim was a little distracted. His eyes kept wandering during the meal as if he were thinking about something. "Honey, what's wrong?" Carrie couldn't help asking. "Nothing, I'm just a little tired," Jim said with a forced smile. Throughout the evening he tried hard to be a good husband, but the more he did so, the more Carrie felt that something was wrong. After returning home, Carrie took a shower and changed into sexy pajamas. Jim came out of the bathroom and saw her. His eyes brightened for a moment before returning to their usual calm. He walked over, embraced her and whispered in her ear, "Wife, you're so beautiful." Carrie took the initiative to kiss him on the lips and her hand explored his robe. "Maybe no condom?" she asked softly with a hint of experimentation. Jim's body stiffened for a moment, his eyes flickered. Too soon. He came up with a lame excuse and rummaged through the bedside table for an ultra-thin condom. Carrie watched him with a sneer. Wasn't he afraid that wearing a condom would delay his seating of the mistress? Afterwards, Jim quickly fell asleep, snoring lightly. Carrie, however, was wide awake. The sticky feeling in her body and the unease in her heart made her even more alert. In the dark, Carrie kept her eyes wide open and Daphne's gentle face once again came to mind. No, there must be something wrong. She sat up quickly and took Jim's phone. His phone didn't have a password, only a fingerprint unlock. Carrie trembled as she pressed Jim's thumb on the screen. Click. The phone unlocked. Carrie's heart was beating fast and her palms began to sweat. She clicked on what's, and the topmost chat box had a rose as its avatar. Carrie clicked on the chat history and a stream of messages came into view. Why are you giving me money? I want an abortion. Daphne's message was a little willful and arrogant. Good brother. What perfume did you spray today, sister, that made my heart tremble? I sprayed ylang ylang especially for you. Carrie felt a wave of nausea and her stomach turned over. Ylang ylang. It turned out that the rose fragrance that night was to cover up the ylang ylang. She finally understood where that lingering rose fragrance came from. The tenderness and thoughtfulness that had once moved her now seemed like nothing more than a hypocritical performance. Carrie exited the chat box and clicked on Daphne's circle of friends. My brother is so strong. The photo that accompanied the message was of a bite mark on the lips, flirtatious and provocative. I accidentally bit my brother's lips, but I ended up feeling sorry for him. Carrie's mind flashed back to Jim's cut lip from a week ago. Philly is too dry, it's inflamed. That was his explanation at the time. Carrie felt a wave of nausea and she turned off her phone and threw it aside. Jim, you really disgust me. The chat continued. Listen to your sister. I'll get an abortion and you can go back to your family. We were wrong from the start and we should never see each other again. Daphne's message was full of understanding and concession. Carrie sneered. Trying to play hard to get? That's pretty high level. Jim's reply popped up on the screen. No, I won't allow it. You will never leave my world. The words revealed his excitement and panic like a trapped beast cornered. Carrie's knuckles turned white as she crushed the phone in her hand. She felt anger and betrayal and her chest felt like it was going to explode. She wanted to scream, to question, to smash the phone in Jim's hypocritical face. But she held back. At least not now. Carrie told herself. In the darkness, Jim suddenly woke up and asked, Babe, what's wrong? The faint light from the phone hit Carrie's face and she had an expressionless face. Nothing, I can't sleep. Her voice was calm and no emotions could be detected. I failed as a husband. I didn't make you tired, Jim said softly as he put his arm around her. What a great performance. Oscar should win an award. Carrie thought to herself. A few seconds later, Jim fell asleep again, breathing heavily. Promiscuity. Carrie wondered. After graduation, his demands in bed increased, sometimes making her cry. Something's wrong, she thought. Could it be that he's trying to make up for what he did to Daphne by taking it out on me? Carrie felt like she was falling into a hole in the ice. On the way home, the scenery outside the window passed by in a blur. Carrie remembered when they first met at the welcome party, when Jim had seen her for the first time and stuttered. School hunk falls in love at first sight. The jokes of those around her still rang in her ears. During college, Jim pursued her like crazy. He loved me and I loved him. The good old days now seem like a big joke. Her phone vibrates. It's Detective Jason. Sorry, miss, there's been a mistake. Daphne and your husband have known each other for a long time. How long? About 3 years. The detective sends a photo. It's Jim, a young man, kissing Daphne during their senior year. 3 years ago. Isn't that the year we broke up after a fight? Carrie felt her blood freeze. In their senior year, Carrie and Jim had a fight over a small argument and she broke up with him and went north alone. Jim chased after her that night, standing in the cold wind in a suit, shivering with a pile of cigarette butts at his feet. When he saw her, Jim embraced her, saying, Peach, let's not break up, okay? You don't like being apart, so I'll move closer to you. I'll move the company north too. After saying this, he fainted. He had a high fever and pneumonia and almost died. Between dying and missing me, he would rather die. How ironic it sounds now, the once deep confession. For Jim, Carrie gave up everything in the north and married him thousands of miles away in the south. He chose me again and again, so I chose him. How foolish she had felt at the time. But now he tells me that he had been involved with Daphne from the start. 7-year itch? Or a long-planned betrayal? Carrie was in tears. The taxi driver gave her a worried look. It's nothing, I just cried during the movie. Carrie said chokingly. This generation of young people is really interesting. They can cry like this just watching a movie. Are movies so touching nowadays? The driver was full of inner monologue. Carrie ignored the driver's inner monologue. She just wanted to go home now. Miss, I'm really sorry. Detective Jason's voice was a little panicked. the investigation. Time is tight and the information is not comprehensive enough. As you know, in a legal society, hotel surveillance can't be checked casually. This is all we can find out for now. Carrie smiled wryly and said with understanding, "That's enough." She neatly handed over the 100000 reward. "Thank you, Jason." Jason paused as if there was something else he wanted to say. International New City. Jason suddenly revealed another piece of information. Carrie's eyes narrowed. The address of Daphne's husband's company. She immediately turned the car around and headed straight for International New City. This woman is not simple. The car stopped in front of the International New City building. Carrie took a deep breath and walked into the building, which symbolized power and wealth. The receptionist showed her into a spacious and bright office with various awards and certificates hanging on the wall. William, graduated from Cambridge University, worked at Goldman Sachs, took over the family business at the age of 28 and doubled its profits in just a few years. What a formidable character. Carrie quickly looked over the information on the table. A few minutes later, the door to the office opened and a man walked in. He was wearing a well-tailored suit, gold-rimmed glasses, his hair combed neatly back, but his tie was casually loose and his long legs were crossed. The face was strikingly handsome but also had an offensive fickle air about it. His eyes in particular were like those of a cunning fox. "Hello, I'm William," he said straightforwardly. "I heard from my assistant that Miss asked me to come because of my wife." His voice was low and carried a subtle hint of playfulness. Carrie did not flinch and looked him straight in the eye. "Yes, your wife is pregnant with my husband's child." "Impossible." William denied it, leaning back slightly but without panic. "Miss probably doesn't know much about it, but my wife believes in Buddhism, is kind and generous and wouldn't even hurt an ant. How could she possibly destroy someone else's family?" "Really?" Carrie asked. "She volunteers at an orphanage every month on the 15th each, and donates to the International Women and Children's Organization every year. With such a high moral standard, of course she wouldn't hurt others for selfish reasons." William continued to argue eloquently, his eyes calm but his right hand unconsciously clenched into a fist, the veins on the back of his hand clearly visible. "Hypocrite." Carrie sneered to herself. "Mr. Cheen." Carrie suddenly changed the subject. "Have you been abroad for the past few months?" "I've been in the UK for the past 2 years dealing with the branch office, and I only returned a month ago," William explained. "Husbands and wives live apart and we rarely see each other." Carrie took out Daphne's pregnancy test report and pointed to the date on it. "First trimester. But you only returned a month ago, so that doesn't make sense, does it?" William's eyes became dark and unfathomable. He didn't say anything for a few seconds, then he said, "Miss has achieved her goals, so please go back." Carrie got up and was about to leave. "Miss," William suddenly called out to her, "since my wife is pregnant with your husband's child, why don't you cheat on her husband too?" His tone was relaxed as if he were joking, but his eyes held a hint of testing and calculation. Carrie turned her head quickly, looking shocked. "What did you say? Cheat on her husband? Are you crazy?" William raised the corners of his lips, revealing a fox-like smile. "Why does Miss think that kind of person is someone to mess with?" "Cooperation." Carrie instantly understood what he meant. "Join forces to retaliate? Each gets what they want and we cooperate happily." William held out his hand to her. "To our common enemy, cheers?" Carrie shook his hand, her eyes firm. "To making them pay, cheers." A dangerous atmosphere filled the air and a carefully planned revenge drama was about to begin. 3 days later, Carrie followed Daphne's usual practice and went to the orphanage she often visited. Daphne, a charity volunteer, wore a beautiful mink coat and stood out in the rundown surroundings. She was gently washing the hands of a young boy who had fallen and was now shivering in the cold wind. His clothes were full of holes and he accidentally smudged Daphne's mink coat with his dark handprints, but she didn't care and continued to gently comfort him. "The other day I saw her bury a stray dog that had frozen to death with her own hands and wrap it in her own coat." She folded her hands together and mourned silently. A young volunteer exclaimed, "What a kind heart." The child she's carrying will definitely be blessed. Daphne looked shy. Oh yes, your husband will be here later, right? Of course. Today we said we'd celebrate the children's birthdays together. Birthday? Carrie was shocked. Isn't today the day Jim goes to deliver New Year's gifts to important clients? Damn it, she's lying again. This woman is really calculating. Carrie suddenly realized, and anger welled up in her heart again. She dialed Jim's phone. Honey, are you still going to deliver New Year's gifts to those important clients today like you did in previous years? Yes, why, honey? Jim's voice was as gentle as always. I don't feel very well. Can you go some other time? Carrie asked tentatively. Oh, I can't, honey. You can't forget your roots. It's important to maintain relationships with these clients and to maintain our company's reputation. If you're a good girl, I'll come back after I've delivered the gifts and spend some time with you, okay? Jim refused. Just as I thought. How hypocritical. Carrie hung up the phone, unable to hold back her anger any longer. Just then a car with Carrie's birthday license plate number pulled into the orphanage. Jim's car. He's here. He actually came. Carrie felt like her blood had frozen. Trail. Deception. Unforgivable. She couldn't stand it anymore and stormed out of the building, yelling at Jim and Daphne, who had just gotten out of the car. Bitch. You two are both bitches. This sudden outburst of anger resounded throughout the orphanage. In the orphanage, Jim's smile instantly froze on his face, as if the pause button had been pressed, as white as a freshly lime-washed wall. Carrie didn't care about that and rushed up, directly grabbed Daphne's carefully styled low ponytail and yelled, "You're a wolf in sheep's clothing, a vixen who destroys other people's families." She raised her hand and gave 2 loud slaps, the crisp sound echoing in the air. Daphne was stunned and screamed, covering her face, "Jim, help me. This crazy woman." Jim quickly punched the volunteer next to him, who was trying to stop the fight, yelling, "Get out of the way. Who dares to touch her?" Everyone looked at each other, whispering, "Who? Is General Lou's wife?" "I don't know, but judging from the situation it looks like the mistress." In the chaos, Carrie slipped and fell backwards, covered in cake batter. Seeing her chance, Daphne immediately played the damsel in distress, collapsing weakly into Jim's arms and cooing, "Jim, help me." Jim hugged Daphne tenderly and turned to Carrie, saying, "Babe, I'm sorry, Daphne's pregnant. I can't let her fall." Pregnant? Carrie was shocked. "She's faking it. Liar." But then she felt a sharp pain in her stomach. She covered her stomach because she knew what that meant. Her face went pale. Someone in the crowd said, "Abortion." Carrie felt like her world was ending. She fainted. Before she passed out, she saw Jim running towards her. He looked panicked. She thought to herself, "What's with the act? Now you know how to worry." In the hospital, Carrie slowly opened her eyes and saw Jim sitting by the bed. His eyes were red and puffy like an abandoned puppy. He took Carrie's hand and said, "Babe, I'm sorry." And then he burst into tears. "The baby will have more kids in the future." Carrie looked at him coldly and said, "Jim, why are you crying? Who are you trying to impress?" She paused, her tone even colder, and said, "Haven't you already made your choice?" Jim stuttered and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were pregnant too. Daphne didn't mean it. When the other woman came between you, why didn't you think this would happen?" Carrie sneered. "When did you start?" "A year ago." Jim's voice was as low as a mosquito's hum. "I swear the baby really isn't mine. I was just confused. I'll break up with her. Can we start over?" He knelt in front of Carrie, his voice trembling. Carrie just found it laughable. She said each word carefully, each one like a knife stabbing hard at Jim's heart. "Don't say any more." Carrie closed her eyes, her voice tired. "Other people's guilt is worthless to me, but your guilt is so useful to me, to William." Jim's body stiffened and his face instantly turned pale. "Get out," Carrie said coldly. "I feel sick just looking at you." On the day Carrie was discharged from the hospital, the nurse asked her husband why he wasn't there. She sneered, "Him? He's too busy dealing with his little affair with his mistress." The video from the orphanage was uploaded to the internet, and the news that the original wife caught her husband cheating with a mistress and caused her to miscarry quickly became a popular search topic. Internet users quickly found out a lot of information about Jim and Daphne, including very insulting names. Jim's reputation suffered greatly and his partners withdrew their investments. His former colleagues also avoided him, and it was a clear example of, when the wall falls everyone pushes. William sent a message, "So isn't it great to see them fall from grace? But what's the point of just getting divorced? Someone like that deserves to be ruined forever." Carrie replied, "It really is great." William sent another message, "Tell me, what's the fastest way to ruin someone? Fame, power, status, money, the loss of love. I think losing the first four is the most painful." But what's that? Losing everything can only commemorate my true heart and this ridiculous marriage. Carrie looked at the screen of her phone with cold eyes. "Well said." William replied with a thumbs-up emoji saying, "To get revenge, let them lose everything little by little." Carrie felt a chill run down her spine. The scheming in the business world is much more terrifying than this petty stuff in marriage. She thought about how Jim has been struggling lately with the Sure Group. Projects have been taken away, his reputation is ruined, and his predecessors have withdrawn their investments. The company can't hold on much longer. "This is just the beginning," William replied. The moon was high in the sky and Carrie looked at the USB flash drive in her hand. It contained the core confidential data of Jim's company, and if it were leaked it would be enough to completely bankrupt him. "Do you have to be so ruthless?" she wondered. Just then Daphne sent a photo of herself pregnant and smug. "I didn't want to destroy your family, but you forced me to." "Moral blackmail? You really think I'm afraid of you?" Carrie sneered and directly sent the data on the USB flash drive to William. "I don't understand or want to get involved in business affairs." She completely let go of the last shred of hesitation. Daphne sent a few more crazy bed photos with the text, "Stupid woman. These photos prove your husband was unfaithful during our marriage. Wait for the property division. I'm going to make you leave with nothing." A few seconds later Daphne took back the photos. Too late. Carrie had already taken screenshots. "It's time to go back north. My parents have been worried about me." Carrie started packing. She listed the house in the south on the internet, saying it was premarital property and available at half price. She was contacted by someone interested in buying it. Her lawyer also sent her the divorce papers and said, "Public opinion is now very much in your favor. If you sue for divorce, you have a good chance of winning." Carrie left the south. She wanted to cut her ties with the past and start over. In the north, snowflakes were falling. Carrie's parents were waiting at the airport early, and when they saw their daughter they embraced her tightly, saying, "It feels so good to be home." That night Carrie lay in the room she had grown up in, smelling the familiar scents, and finally got a good night's sleep. The next day the lawyer called saying, "Jim refuses to divorce. What should we do? Do we want to sue?" "Sue," Carrie said without hesitation. A few days later Carrie saw Jim again. He was standing at the entrance to the housing estate, unshaven and haggard, looking 10 years older. William really hit hard, Carrie thought. Carrie's father saw Jim and angrily shouted, "You animal, how dare you show your face here? Get out." Her mother pulled her father back and said, "Forget it, don't argue with him, let's go home." Just then Jim fell to his knees in the snow and with a hoarse voice said, "Babe, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was just confused. Daphne is just a sister from the neighborhood. It was just a dream when I was young. The baby has been aborted. Can we start over?" Carrie looked at him with calm eyes, saying, "None of that matters anymore. I won't believe a word you say. Forgive you. That would only make me sick. Sign the divorce papers and get out of my life." Jim left in a daze. He spent 3 days and nights in the parking lot. In the middle of the night the security guard knocked on Carrie's door. "Do you know the man outside? He was burning coal in his car to keep warm and has been sent to the hospital with carbon monoxide poisoning." "You reap what you sow," Carrie thought, unmoved. Her mother asked if she wanted to go to the hospital to see him, but Carrie shook her head and said, "No, just take the divorce papers." "Will he sign them?" her mother asked, worried. Carrie replied calmly, "Yes, after all we were husband and wife and he knows me well. It's time to let go."